I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The Ontario government has banned cell phones and vaping in schools. We have local reaction. Plus, Windsorite Theo Johnson has been drafted to the NFL. We talk with the person who he says got him there. And quickly changing housing policies on the provincial level are creating challenges here at City Hall. We're beginning with a developing story in the last hour. A downtown Windsor intersection is closed right now because of a large hole in the road. That's where we find the CBC's Chris Ensing tonight. Chris, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Meg, a lot of police officers here blocking off the area, and it's because of what's happening at this intersection behind me. I'm just going to pop out of the way here and give you a better look. This is University and Church, and you can see the amount of people standing behind, all preoccupied with what's in the middle right there. And that is a hole in the middle of the intersection. No vehicle anywhere nearby. I haven't seen any ambulances or fire department vehicles in the area at this time either. I'm not aware of any injuries. No one is reporting any injuries at this moment. But we can say that this is an area that police want people to avoid, and that's coming with road closures. So if you're coming into this area now, you want to basically take Dougal down. This guy's going to get turned around here as he comes on the sidewalk, and that's what's going to happen to anybody who comes on down by this area at Church and University. So that's something to keep in mind over the next couple hours. You're not seeing any outages reported at this time. But again, everybody preoccupied with what's going on in the center there. A dip in the pavement as it then jolts back up. It appears we have a sinkhole situation on our hands here downtown, Meg.
Thanks so much for that, Chris. That's the CBC's Chris Ensing reporting live. Big changes around students' cell phone use are coming to Ontario classrooms. It's all part of the Ford government's plan to crack down on distractions in school. We'll bring you local reaction in just a few minutes, but first, here's Ali Chassan with more on what's changing and when it will all go into effect.
In the new school year, kids from kindergartners to grade 6 who have cell phones have to keep them on silent and out of sight while on school property. Older students from grade 7 to grade 12, they can use their cell phone in between periods, but not in the classroom unless they have special permission granted. Also, come September, teachers will have the power to take a student's cell phone, send them to the office, and also write down on that student's report card just how distracted they have been with their cell phone. That is what this is all about, these new rules, to get students less distracted, more focused on their learning. Here's what students and their parents had to think about that.
I don't think they can take it away that easily. Because they've tried in like my brother's school, but it still doesn't work.
And they've already cut off some of the websites that the kids are not allowed on and some of the apps. So I think they shouldn't ban it. I feel like the children, there's certain points where it's necessary.
Cell phones can be like a conflict of interest when it comes to learning, and like it gets in the way.
We have seen cell phone bans before, but it used to be up to each individual school to make up rules that make sense for their student body. And that created inconsistent rules, inconsistent enforcement which became tricky, and it's going to be tricky, so say the teachers' unions.
Social media is a problem, not just for students, but for adults too. But, we're coming down heavy-handed, and I'm worried that we're going to have more policing by teachers and less teaching.
When it comes to vaping, that is going to be an all-out ban. Schools will have a zero-tolerance rule when it comes to vaping, whether it's tobacco or cannabis. We've seen vaping kind of get out of control in schools in recent years, where students would try to vape in class or they would vape in the washroom, and then schools would come up with their own framework of enforcement, some even taking the bathroom doors off of the bathroom. So it's that kind of whack-a-mole situation that the province wants to avoid, and coming up with strict rules that apply across all school boards when it comes to vaping and cell phone use. Ali Chassan, CBC News, Toronto.
We have reaction from students in Windsor tonight, as some told the CBC's Jennifer Lagrassa they aren't pleased with the phone ban.
I think as long as you're not using it like when the teacher's talking, it should be fine.
It's definitely a good tool for learning, but it's also not really something you can really ban, because you can't really take a phone away from students, right? Teachers have tried, it doesn't end up really working. And if students aren't going to pay attention, they aren't going to pay attention regardless of whether or not they have a phone.
But Ontario's Education Ministry hopes that its new rules will mean screens aren't causing the distraction. To get student attention back to the classroom, the province says devices shouldn't be used without permission. Consequences range from having the phone taken away to facing suspension.
Me personally, I wouldn't be okay with that. Like, it's our own cellular device. We should be able to use it. I mean, maybe limited, but we should still be able to use our phones.
One local union leader is doubtful about the new rules.
Is he really thinking that school boards are going to start suspending students en masse for bringing in cell phone usage? Does he think that educators are going to start taking liability by confiscating personal devices that are thousands of dollars? Like, this minister is completely out of touch with the reality of what's happening in his schools.
But the local public board says it's hopeful about the changes as long as parents are also on board.
I think it's going to have an impact. Particularly because it's come from the ministry. We'll see as it's implemented what that looks like in terms of support from parents, that if there is going to be consequences, obviously there needs to be exceptions for some students.
The new rules come into effect in September. The public board will update its policies to include the consequences, and the Windsor-Essex Catholic District School Board says it will be reviewing its policies as well. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
A young motorcycle driver has died following a crash in Windsor over the weekend. Police say it happened around 8:30 last night on Dougal Avenue near EC Row Expressway. Investigators say a vehicle turned left onto the expressway and collided with an oncoming biker. The 19-year-old motorcycle rider was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Police have not said if any charges will be laid. Windsorite Theo Johnson has been drafted to the NFL. On Saturday, the tight end was selected to the New York Giants. Johnson was the second Canadian off the board. We spoke with him prior to the draft. Here's a clip of that interview. When you think about the people who got you here, who comes to your mind?
My mom. Yeah, my mom, she's a special woman. She's done a lot for me and my brothers to get us here. She's been through a lot. She's fought, scratched, and clawed for the life that me and my brothers now have. Being a single mom with 6 kids is not easy. So I just hope to bring her some joy. That's like, the most fulfilling thing for me is like, walking into the stadium and see my mom and see a little tear in her eye and know that like I gave her a little bit of joy. When I think about why I'm here, I think about my mom.
That was Theo Johnson, who was recently drafted by the New York Giants. And that woman he spoke so highly about, well, that's his mom, Amy Johnson. And she joins us now. Amy, thank you so much for speaking with us.
My pleasure.
Theo told us last week that the most fulfilling thing about playing football was bringing you a little bit of joy. How were you feeling Saturday when he got the call he was being drafted?
Relieved, more than anything else. The waiting is over.
You really have such an incredible story. Can you share with us why Windsor became home for you and your 6 sons?
Well, I finished my undergrad degree and knew that I needed to do a little more with my life than just my undergrad degree, with some suggestions, some gentle suggestions from other members of the bar. I decided to apply to law school. And Windsor was the law school that decided to take a chance on a woman with 6 kids.
And your story, even before law school, like you have really come back from so much. Can you explain to us kind of why law school was a passion for you and the situation that happened for you to get there?
Well, life wasn't easy. Life during the marriage wasn't easy. We had to escape a pretty dangerous situation. All things considered, I mean, we came out okay, but there were some bumpy roads along the way. We were homeless for a period of time. We had to rely on the generosity of others. We had to utilize housing services. There were a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Theo told us that you have fought, scratched, and clawed for the life that you've been able to give your children. When you hear words like that, what do you think?
I think he's exaggerating.
Really?
You know, I'm never really one to talk about myself. I give credit to everyone else. It's actually quite uncomfortable for me to accept praise or a pat on the back. I like to believe that I would do what any mother would do under those circumstances, which is whatever you need to do to make sure that everybody's okay. I came last, they came first. I like to think that that's what moms do.
Spoken like a true mom. And what should the audience know about Theo as he starts his NFL career? What don't we know about him?
You probably don't know that there was no one more critical of him than him. Anything that anybody says about him, he has already said that to himself. He challenges himself. He is very dedicated and loyal, but also a real perfectionist. So he wants to be the best that he can for himself and for others.
Well, thank you so much for that, Amy.
You're welcome.
That is Amy Johnson, Theo's mom and a Windsor lawyer. That draft a moment Theo Johnson and his family will never forget, and neither will the city of Detroit. Michigan's governor announced Detroit broke the draft's previous attendance record with more than 775,000 fans showing up. WXYZ sports reporter Gina Trotman was very busy this weekend, but she made some time for us today.
It's been crazy. We've worked so hard and around the clock to bring it to everybody, but the feedback has been incredible because I think nobody could get enough of it. From our news stories just of businesses and fans and these behind the scenes stories to analysts and to the actual draft pick stories. It was so funny. You cover every angle, and then at the end of the day, you're like, no, we still have to cover who the Lions got today. So it's been wild, but like in the best way.
Is there a moment this weekend that really sticks out to you? Like you're like, I'm going to remember this when I retire.
We were leaving at 1:45 in the morning, and I was walking down Woodward in the middle of Woodward because it was closed off. And I was just like looking up at the city, like looking around me. People were just cleaning up and setting up for tomorrow. And for someone who's from here, just to remember the days of being downtown, like as a kid, and now being 33 and looking around and seeing the way the city showed up, that's the moment that I don't think I'll ever forget.
How do you think the Lions did kind of coming out of the draft?
Every draft, I think Lions fans are used to the draft being the Super Bowl for us because the Lions are never near the bottom of the draft. They're always at the top. So I think everyone who's followed this team is used to this draft being this huge, huge deal. And like now this year, we're like, who do you get? What holes we filling up? Because there's not like this dire need for someone or something or a position. So it's been this weird ease about it and not a lot of questions or complaining. I mean, Brad Holmes took 2 cornerbacks, traded off for both of them back to back, and no one around here is really like batting an eye about it, which I think is funny, but very true of the times as well. Terrion Arnold, the guy they picked first, he is incredible. I think Lions fans are going to die over him.
Colette, what a gorgeous day here in Windsor. Feeling a lot more like summer than spring, but looking out the windows right now, those skies are getting pretty dark.
Yeah, there is a little bit of inclement weather on the way, but yeah, some absolutely summer-like conditions, no doubt about it. But talking about some of the conditions and actually the active weather from the weekend and the end of last week, especially stateside, a lot of severe weather. Likely many of you at home have already heard about, or at least something about the outbreak there. But I just want to show you because it is rather dramatic, I find. If we back up, this is not current, this is from the weekend, Saturday specifically, looking at the state of Oklahoma and especially south of Oklahoma City, some of those communities there with the deadly outbreak of tornadoes, at least 4 lives lost. And, you know, the National Weather Service has been in only to do their preliminary reports, but it looks like perhaps at least 2 of these tornadoes were EF3, so very, very strong storms. Over the course of 4 days, though, 130 tornadoes were associated with the system. couple of systems actually, and including what's coming towards us. I'm not saying that kind of severe weather is coming our way, but these just from Saturday, all the tornadoes being reported. On top of that, hail and wind damage reports as well. So the same kind of system that pushed in some of that warm air, well, here it is, where temperatures, and it's just in southwestern Ontario, it doesn't go very far. Goderich, Kitchener, look at the numbers there, kind of half of what we're seeing in terms of the readings. And it's not only the warm temperatures, it's also the fact that it's humid, and that is why it feels kind of more like summer than perhaps a slightly warm spring day. The winds too, it's been more of this flow from the west to southwest. That's been picking our temperatures up, whereas just a bit further east, it's an easterly wind. So winds have a lot to do with it too. But here we go, the darkening skies. Yes, we do have some storminess moving in. Now, I'm not suggesting there aren't some thunderstorms here. There are, but it's more likely of some strong winds, perhaps some small hail. That's the kind of intensity that we should be looking at with these through the overnight hours, carrying on, and then tomorrow drying out, still some clouds early, and then we're going to get into clearing and another pretty nice afternoon. And it's not just going to be Tuesday afternoon. Much of Wednesday looks pretty good. A little more cloud cover, but it still looks relatively dry. Temperatures overnight tonight, those are mild too. We're going to hold in the mid-teens. And then where are we going tomorrow? Well, how about not only tomorrow, the next 5 days, where temperatures go back into the 20s. Yes, some humidity there as well, and we will get that clearing into the afternoon. After that, the next chance for rain showers comes back again for Friday, Mick.
Well, thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
With housing policies changing rapidly, the city says they are going to need some more time on some deadlines. We have more local news coming up after the break. Cities across Ontario are on a mad dash to decide what listed heritage properties need protections. Windsor has until January 1st to decide, but city staff says they need more time. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
Walkerville has a towering history, built as a model town with the foundation of whiskey and manufacturing. Today, its historic charm is celebrated and protected. The city keeps a list of properties that are significant to the city's heritage. These buildings, they can't be demolished. About a third of the 900 properties on the list are in Walkerville. Next January, the province will purge that list, and those protections will be lost. Not every building or home on the list meets criteria for protection, but figuring out which ones takes time. City staff say they need more of it.
It is a very challenging situation in terms of trying to get that many properties that are on the register adequately reviewed.
This is one example of how Bill 23 is changing cities. As staff prepared reports to inform council on the specific effects, more new legislation was introduced, and that changed the rules again.
We are just finalizing the original changes from Bill 23, and we actually have a report ready to come to council that we deferred because these then dropped. So these legislative and regulatory changes are coming fast and furious, and municipalities aren't having a lot of time to respond and implement them accordingly.
Windsor's mayor says that's the cost of a quick-acting government.
It's one of the beautiful things about Premier Ford. He's not about sitting back and waiting a year to solve something. He wants to solve it today. And so it's a matter, all of us elected officials have to be responsible to be monitoring those changes that are important to us and the legislations that are important to us, the bills as they come forward. You have to be able to monitor that, whether it's at the provincial level or the federal level.
Council is asking the Premier for more time when it comes to the heritage properties. It wants a 5-year extension to the deadline with plans to prioritize the list until they get a response. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Sunday was the National Day of Mourning for workers killed or injured on the job. A crowd gathered on Windsor's riverfront for the annual memorial event held by the Windsor and District Labour Council. CBC Windsor was there.
It's an important day to remember those that have lost their lives at work or have been seriously injured, where their lives have changed. People have a right to go to work and come home. We think about workers falling from heights or being crushed by materials. There's also workplace violence. There's workplace injuries that happen in the education sector, in the healthcare sector. And it's important to have this day, not just to mourn for those that have passed, but also to raise awareness to prevent any further tragedies or deaths. I think organizations still have to fight to advocate for health and safety measures in the workplace. Workers do have a right to refuse unsafe work. We're bringing awareness every day to this, and yet our numbers are still trending upward instead of downward.
I'm here today for the National Day of Mourning in memory of my husband, Claudio Cardoso, who was killed in a workplace accident January 21st of 2009. He was killed when an unsecure rack fell on top of him, killing him instantly. It was a metal rack weighing 1,000 pounds. Even though it's been many years, it still brings you back to that day because it's such a traumatic event that happens in your life. You never forget it. I struggle with this every day. They got a fine, but any company can pay a fine. It's our lives, your family's lives that are destroyed, and they got just a fine.
We have more news coming up. Stay tuned. Federal Conservatives want the government to provide more information about its multi-billion-dollar funding contracts with electric vehicle manufacturers. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
Release the information. Prove me wrong. I dare you.
Conservative MP Rick Perkins says it's still unclear how many temporary foreign workers will build Canada's huge electric vehicle and battery plants. The Conservatives introduced a motion today at a House of Commons committee asking the federal government to make public details in those contracts about the hiring of Canadian and foreign workers.
What is the final number of allowable foreign replacement workers in this contract? And how much are Canadians going to have to pay to employ these foreign replacement workers?
It comes after another massive funding announcement last week, $2.5 billion from Ottawa to help Honda build 4 new electric vehicle plants in Ontario. Canada's Building Trades Union says it's in talks with the company to maximize the number of Canadians building that factory. The union has accused another EV manufacturer, Nexstar Energy and LG, of using foreign workers to build its facility in Windsor. But the company says of its 2,000 employees, 72 are not from Canada and necessary since they're installing specialized equipment.
The next generation with more opportunities.
The Prime Minister assuring the union at its annual conference in the capital, the government will try to make sure as many Canadians as possible are employed in the construction projects.
When you have a Canadian worker sitting at home collecting employment insurance in their home community, and there are foreign workers doing his or her work in a plant, that is just completely inexplicable to that Canadian worker. We can't have that happen, Prime Minister.
I agree entirely, and we will be there to support you every step of the way. We will be there to lean in to make sure that the intent and the support of the contracts is there.
This is about electric vehicles, but it's also about courting support from working-class Canadians, something all the political parties are trying to do. Another sign of that, tomorrow Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will also speak at this conference of trade unions. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.